The all-time high was set back in December 2017, around 20K. We broke that in late November of 2020, like 3 years later. You know, we went above it, but then we got rejected. We had a red week after that. But then look what happened immediately after that. 1, 2, 3, 4 straight weeks going from 20K up to 40K, a doubling in price. Okay, a doubling in price in about a month. While the bulls were able to hold the $62,000 price level for Bitcoin as support over the weekend, is the downside scenario invalidated completely, leaving the sidelined bears ready to be absolutely liquidated big time around the $75,000 price level? Or is something bigger, dare I say twice as big, actually happening? Over the weekend, Bitcoin was incredibly vulnerable, similar to being in a public restroom and finding out there's no toilet paper. It's a very scary situation. However, we've seen Bitcoin actually have a massive bounce, and the big question is the downside or any substantial dumpy downside now out of the question? And are we actually going higher? Much higher. So if you like getting dumped on, pumped on, and literally everything in between, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Get signed up to FEMEX or BINGX below if you want to buy Bitcoin or altcoins. And without any further ado, let's completely jump in here. So as we talked about, I believe it was on Friday, there was a very strong potential that we actually were forming a head and shoulders, potentially breaking down here. The major thing that I said, though, is that if we hold 62,000, this obviously can't happen. 62,000 was kind of that neckline. It's like the validation point to where we, potentially were in trouble. And we didn't go below 62,000. We held at 62,000. So that was the first very big thing that we've seen. Now, are we completely out of the woods? Is there no chance of a substantial breakdown below 60K? Or is there still that scenario? And the exact opposite, are we actually going to completely smother, completely initiate a massive giga bang to the bears and actually push up to that range of about 75,000, where a lot of short positions are? Initiating a potential short squeeze, completely squeezing the juice out of the bears. As I've been saying for weeks, even if we do get a big pullback, it will be very short-lived. And obviously, as I've been saying for the past two years, basically, well, not 2 years, about the last year and a half, we're in a macro uptrend. And this is absolutely, going to be a massive bull run. And now, as we're less than a month from the Bitcoin halving, this truly is like the most exciting time, right? We've been waiting literally 4 years, basically, for this moment now. I think it's silly to be like long-term short on this market or even medium-term short. Bitcoin is clearly in a very bullish trend. And right now, we've actually done something very big. So I want to look at that. Just looking at the short-term charts on the 4-hour chart, this channel I've had on since last week. And I check it today for the first time over the last 2 days. I think the last time I looked at it was right about here, all right? I went away for the weekend, came back. We actually held this exact trend line around 64,000, and we dipped all the way down, it looks, to about 62,400. So we didn't even touch 62,000, and we didn't go below 62,000, which is where that danger of a potential bigger breakdown was. And we absolutely, held significantly above that. In fact, we put in a higher low, and now we've actually put in a higher high as well, higher than the high set back on March 20th of this year, just a couple of days ago. And really the big question is, when does this become invalidated? A complete breakdown possibility at all? And are we going a lot higher? So there is also the possibility now of, this is on a 4-hour chart, so it's a pretty small chart. All of this potential inverse head and shoulders is just about a 10 days worth of price action. But there's a clear neckline around this level, which it looks like we've already begun breaking out of now. The left shoulder was about on March 17th, then March 20th, then March 23rd. So about 3 days in between each of these shoulders and the head. And then we started breaking out of it. But again, it's also illustrated pretty nicely on this chart, just a falling channel here. Really though, breakout target of this pattern has the chance to bring us all the way up to right around our all-time highs, and also give us the possibility, the thing that will unleash more juice is if we start squeezing the shorts. Because basically the higher we go, the more fuel we have to keep going higher as long as there's a ton of short positions there. Right now, Bitcoin sits around 69,000 US dollars. Nice. Sitting right at resistance. We look at this chart. You can see right here is pretty big because we absolutely want to flip this 69,000. Nice. And we don't want to get rejected here because if we do get a rejection here, that obviously wouldn't be good. But, you know, we have gone significantly above 69,000 already today. So a strong daily close is really important. This chart itself, this is a 4-hour chart. You can kind of see where that potential head and shoulders pattern was. But as we pointed out, there are a lot of other things that were showing up, especially on the shorter time frames. And actually, I want to show on the daily chart and weekly as well, because there's some other really big things that have happened. But first, we see that weak hands are continuing to help us move forward as they get shaken out. Really, I don't see, even if we do get a pullback for a week or two, I don't see any reason to like get rid of your bags. I think that's the silliest thing before a gigantic bull market, just a couple of weeks until the halving. I think shorting in general Bitcoin right now or selling in expectation of trying to time a bigger dump is so silly right now. Again, I've been tweeting this and saying this in videos for a while. Basically, the best thing to do right now is not much, right? You've waited 4 years for this opportunity. And if you have Bitcoin, if you have your bags, you really don't have to do that much right now. This is the part where you can kind of just sit on your hands, you know, drink a couple Capri Suns, a couple lemonades, Sunny D's, literally do nothing and you'll make money. So pro tip is, you know, sometimes in very, very small percentage parts of the Bitcoin cycle, the best parts, you literally don't have to do anything if you have a bag, basically, if you're invested. The higher we have gone this year, the deeper the outflows from exchanges. Basically, the higher the price of Bitcoin, the more demand there is. That's a pretty reflexive, bullish thing. We also see GBTC sending about 300 million to Coinbase. So there is still a decent amount of outflows, but maybe the inflows are going to start to pick up again this week, which last week the inflows from Fidelity and BlackRock were pretty minimal. They were not very strong. But as Bitcoin Munger has also been pointing out, and myself, and I think most people that are bullish on this space, that even if we do get dips, they're not going to last long. Every cohort continues to furiously buy the dip. It's only a matter of time before we see 80 and beyond. I personally think, and this is something I've also been saying for the last few weeks here, is that I personally think that when we actually see, because we've already broken all-time highs, we had a rejection there. I mean, let's go to the daily chart so we can illustrate this. Right about here was previous all-time highs, kind of right where we're challenging right now. We broke above it, right? We got many daily closes above it. I don't know, 4 or 5 daily closes above it. Got a rejection retest. We're like below it now. If we ultimately can reclaim this level and break and do a new all-time high, historically, that is exactly when things get the most explosive. It's not on the first attempt. It's not on the first attempt. And we can actually look, if we pull out like a weekly chart and go back to even, let's just say the last time Bitcoin did this, right? Bitcoin broke it here. It broke its all-time high here. The all-time high was set back in December 2017, around 20K. We broke that in late November of 2020, like 3 years later. You know, we went above it, but then we got rejected. We had a red week after that. But then look what happened immediately after that. 1, 2, 3, 4 straight weeks going from 20K up to 40K, a doubling in price, okay? A doubling in price in about a month. Do you understand that if we get something similar to that this time, basically by the end of next month, Bitcoin, you know, I'm not saying we are going to double. I think that's a very bullish scenario. I think it's possible, but I don't think it's the most likely. But basically, if that same thing happened, Bitcoin could be 140K within the next couple of weeks if it just kind of did the similar thing that it did the last time it broke all-time highs and got insanely explosive like last time. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm also not saying that's not going to happen. That's very realistic. It's a very possible scenario. That like absolutely could happen. So would you be prepared for a scenario like that? To where, like, let's say you go to sleep for the next month. Let's say you're in a coma for the next month, just 1 month, and you wake up and Bitcoin's at 140K. First of all, do you realize how insane media coverage of Bitcoin would be? Everybody would be texting you, right? We've been having this debate of like, when's my cousin, when's my, my relative, my uncles, my aunts, my neighbors, when are they going to start texting me asking about Bitcoin again? If Bitcoin did exactly what it did last time as it broke those previous all-time highs and then had a 4-week complete upside expansion of a doubling of the entire price, that is when people would be texting you. Literally, I think anyone that has ever heard of Bitcoin and knows that you're invested would probably be texting you. That would be like pretty euphoric, right? That would be insane. And that literally happened. That has happened multiple times, honestly. Literally the last cycle. It's just mind-blowing. So we got a rejection off of the initial all-time high. We did break it. I mean, technically, we broke the all-time high and then got a few daily closes above it, got a rejection, which is currently kind of where we're at right now. And if over the next week, we're able to actually truly break that all-time high and start using it as support, because right now it's a little bit of resistance, right? We look at the daily chart. This area right here, I already drew it. This area right here is that previous all-time high. If we go back, we have to go back really far, right? This right here is the all-time high, previous all-time high. Here we are again. We're literally right there testing that. That's resistance right now. If we can break above this again, which we did already, like, right back at the beginning of March. If we break above that this next time, it's going to happen. Nobody knows exactly when. It could be today. I mean, it could be this week, very likely. But when that happens, things could get extremely explosive, and it could get very pumpy very quickly for Bitcoin. And it's extreme. It's literally the most exciting thing that could be happening. And it has been happening. All the last 16 months, Bitcoin has been doing exactly what we anticipated in terms of entering a new bull market. And here we are. We had that new all-time high break just like 2 weeks ago. Massive, very exciting. But the real excitement starts when we start doing, let me go to a different chart. When we start doing what we did the last time this happened. I believe we're right here. This is where I believe we are in this cycle. But it's also, it's not even really an opinion. It's just objective fact. This was the previous all-time high. We're at it. And same thing here. This is the previous all-time high, and we're at it. So yes, this is exactly where we are in the cycle, in my opinion, right here. And at any moment, right, we could have a breakdown. We could basically, the scenario we discussed of getting a breakdown would be something like, maybe a little bit bigger of a dip down to this 21 week right here, the equivalent of something like that. But ultimately, this is what I believe is going to happen, big time. And, whether it's today, later this week, or next week, or even after the halving, it could be. But we already have seen this cycle break that pattern of all-time highs before a halving. That's never happened before until this cycle. It's very big. On the weekly chart as well, it just looks beautiful. Daily chart, you can see we see the momentum kind of shifting a little bit. It's a little too early. Maybe a bullish cross on the MACD. RSI as well is having a little bit of a touch here, tip touch convergence right here. It's possible we actually see this have another breakout. Again, the patterns are there on the short term, like this pattern here, absolutely is realistic. And as of this moment, this pattern looks invalidated. This chart here, because basically this was the deciding moment right here. As we were forming this head, if we came down right here and lost that was the deciding moment. And instead, Bitcoin held pretty significantly above it, to be honest. It didn't really even come, it came within like less than $1,000, but yeah, I guess that could have been a little bit, couldn't have been much closer, I guess. It was pretty close. Ultimately though, looking at these charts, it's crazy. We see the stock market, a little bit green today, DXY a little bit red today, which again, further lets Bitcoin have its time in the sun, right? It lets Bitcoin absolutely go wild, and there's no restraint basically if those two factors are also behaving correctly, meaning stock market is correlated and DXY is inversely correlated. But yeah, looking at this chart, it's just crazy to think that what I think is going to be happening. So if I would have to sum up again, what I think is going to be happening over the next few months, which is the only thing that matters for most people don't even care if we dump $10,000 in a couple days and then bounce right back, right? Most people don't care. But what I think is going to be happening over the next couple of months is exactly this. And again, I don't know if I've given like an exact number of what I think Bitcoin realistically could reach this cycle, but I think that 150 is like a reasonable, rational, and even possibly really low target for this bull cycle. $150,000 per Bitcoin, I think is a pretty low target for this cycle, right? We have the perfect recipe in all regards, in terms of the macro, in terms of the Fed policy shifting, in terms of, again, I'm still so thankful Sam Bankman-Fried is out of the picture. The guy was the worst. He was largely responsible. In fact, he was almost solely responsible, him and FTX, the way that they, first of all, he didn't even like Bitcoin, right? He like deliberately did not like Bitcoin. He was the reason that we went below 20K. And there's so much evidence and in just objective data that, I mean, he was even like purposely telling his employees, right, to sell, like to try to crash it as much as they could. Like it could not have been more deliberate. Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but the point is, I'm so happy we don't have SBF involved in this cycle. It makes the cycle, the possibilities, so much more healthy and optimistic and positive. And as I recorded this, actually, as I'm saying this, Bitcoin just broke above 70,000 for the first time in a while. Now it's a little bit below it, but anyway, yeah, I mean, there will still be bad actors. Will there be another SPF? Sure. But I think that getting rid of SBF, and I think the space facing its first, or at least the biggest villain of the last cycle, is a very positive thing, and coming out on top, right? Because SBF could still be here. Imagine that. Imagine if SBF was still involved in crypto during this run. That's, you have that little cancerous tumor that's ruining everything. That's basically what SBF was. So I'm glad that we had that, plucked out of the space. I think that the space is healthier for it. And as I was saying, basically there's so many positive things going for Bitcoin this time. I think Bitcoin would have went higher if SBF was not involved in the last bull market. But basically, the past is the past. It doesn't matter. The point is, I think we're in a very good spot right now. And I think $150,000 per Bitcoin is a very realistic and even potentially low target for this cycle. And get signed up to FEMEX or BINGX below if you want to buy Bitcoin or altcoins. And without any further ado,